So this is going to be an additional part. It's not going to be necessary to do if you're following the third-person shooter tutorial. And in this one we will see, in the way we have set up our weapon system, we can see how easy it is to add more features like weapon attachments. So I have my M4A1 over here, and I dropped inside my rifle over here. I have this sight, which of course should be somewhere around over here. I'm just going to put it here, just for now. And I have this is going to represent a foregrip, since I don't have one. Just some examples of what additional anyway, so with our attachment, our weapon attachments over here, we can go, let me close that, we can go to our weapon control script, and let's start writing some code. First off, I'm going to add a boolean, and I want this to be public, just so that we can do changes from the inspector, and we can say has attachments. And I'm going to add a list, or let's just not add a list, let's just add an array, since the attachments are not going to be, we won't be able to add or remove attachment dynamically. We will already set this up from the inspector. So let's call this attachments. And now on start, let's do a for each loop and close them all in attachments. We can be even more precise, but let's just do, for instance, if we want to have only one site, we can simply have, instead of an array, have two different slots, or game object slots, and we can drop and drag them over there, and or maybe let's just do it that way, because it's going to be easier to change stuff, and I don't want to. Now I'm making them public so that we can drop them from the inspector, but it's pretty easy to do it, to make it happen automatically. So we want site and we want a foregrip, and let's actually make it so that they automatically search for this. So if has attachments, if get component. Now of course we need a script which we haven't already made, so we will search for get component in children. If we have attachments, it will search for a foregrip script, inside are children, the children of our weapon, and if it has one, it will assign to the foregrip get component and children foregrip script dot game object. Now it's going to be almost the same with our site, but we're going to say attachment site, and here we will say site. I'm not doing site script because we already have it for our enemies. Now let's go back into Unity and let's create the scripts. Foregrip script, and the other one was called I think weapon, forgot it, attachment site, attachment site. But delete this one, and you see now we don't have, or we do. And let's see. So obvious, I forgot the, and now I can drop to my site over here. I can drop not the foregrip, I want the site script, and to my foregrip over here I can drop the foregrip script, and when I hit play, we don't get any errors, the game objects are assigned. So if we have a foregrip, let's close it. False, and if site dot set active to false. And if I hit play, nothing happens, and that is because we didn't click the has attachments. And now you can see that for some reason the site didn't close. And let's make sure we have the site script. Then oh yeah, that's the wrong site script. We want the attachment site, that was the error, and this closes over here. Now for each of these scripts you can add, and we will add, let me rename this also foregrip. We can add some logic that manipulates the values from our weapon control. Now for the foregrip script, I'm simply going to change, I want a public game object for the hand placement, and I want another hand placement game object so that I can save, I can store the previous hand placement. So on update, if store hand placement equals null, we can also, let's save this over here, let's save our weapon control. So we say if it's null, WPC equals get component in parent weapon control dot hand position. Oh yeah, no, on this, and store hand placement equals WPC dot hand position. And then if and then we can simply do WPC dot hand position equals hand placement. And that, what will this do? Will simply change where the character will have his hand on the weapon. Now we can either do a void on disable, and we can say if store hand placement not equals null, so when we disable the game object, if we have stored position, store hand placement position, we can say WPC dot hand position equals store hand placement. Now let's go back, let's add an empty game object to our foregrip. We will add it, we will see from in game how it looks, and if I hit play, of course now it is deactivated. So just for now, let's go back to weapon control and let's not disable the foregrip. And let's hit play. And if I go and pick it up, and now we get an error, and that's because we haven't assigned to the foregrip the hand placement. And if I hit play, once again I'm picking up the rifle, and for some reason I was stuck. Let's see what's happening. Now you see, if I aim, my character's hand, it's not to the usual place, and of course it needs some fixing. So this, let's find, we have foregrip, something like that. Let's debug it. Not shoot, aim, debug aim. And I'm going to my foregrip, and I can position it to where I want the IK to be. Now of course this needs another grip, but that is simple, and I'm not going to show you how to do that. It's pretty simple. I'm going to copy the component and paste over again. So now I'm picking it up, and when I aim, my character's hand is on the other position. So let's create an interface for this, and then I want to create a new camera that this is going to be on orthographic, and I want this camera to be inside my rifle. Now we won't create a new camera for every weapon we have. We can simply move this camera around and to where the current active weapon is. Now I'm going to need something like 5, and the size be something like 1 or even smaller. 0.1 might do. 0.2, 0.3. 0.3 looks like it's okay. So now I want this camera to render only one layer, and I'm going to create a new layer which I'm going to call weapons. So I'm going to assign weapons to my rifle, and if you remember, we have the pickable item. The layer should be at ignore raycast. So I changed it from over here, and I'm going back to my camera, and I'm going to change the cooling mass from everything to weapons, and the clear flags will be not depth thought, will be don't clear, and the depth should be higher than our main camera, and for some reason, let me see why. Let's see. Yes. So this will be the interface we will see when we hit tab if our weapon has an attachment. Now we need to add a new UI, and I'm going to add it as a new canvas, or maybe yes, because I want to be at the screen space of this camera, of the new camera we create. So I'm creating it and put it over there, and I'm going to say weapon canvas. Okay, so for this canvas, I know currently I'm going to create an empty game object, and I'm going to say rifle UI. Now for each weapon I will have a different UI set it from before. Okay, so for this rifle UI, I'm going to create a new button inside, and let's call this button site. Let's duplicate it, let's move it to the other side, and this button will be foregrip. So we need to assign the logic to these buttons. So let's go back to weapon control. Let's create a separate function, and let's say public. Let's make it not public, let's make void, and this function will be responsible for changing our weapons. And I'm going to call this attachments functions, and I'm going to add a few booleans, which I'm going to say enable sight and enable foregrip, and simply if enable sight dot set active to true, and else sight dot set active to false. If enable foregrip dot set active true, else foregrip dot set active to false. And with that we can delete this and we can add one more check so that we know we have a sight. So if a weapon doesn't have all the attachments, then it won't give us errors. We drop the attachment functions inside update, and now we need a few public variables, and let's call this public void sight attachment, and the only thing this will do, it will make the enable sight to be the exact opposite of what it was, and we want another one foregrip will be not foregrip, enable foregrip will be the exact opposite of enable foregrip. And now because of course there are going to be a lot of weapons in the scene, let's make another public game object, and we will call it UI geo, and this what we'll do, let's go if so. Now if we have an owner, and if maybe let's make it so that we have another bool that we know it's used by player, and let's also make it so that we know we have instantiated, although although this doesn't need to be public. So in our update, if we have this weapon equipped, if not has maybe if get component in parent, and that is user input, so if it's not equipped, where is it? I forgot. It was used by player here. So when the first when the weapon gets equipped, if it's not used by player, we'll do a search for a user input, and if it finds it, it will say used by player equals true. Now this should probably not run every frame and should add in one more check, but let's just not do that for now, and we will say if used by player, and if not instantiate UI, then we will instantiate the UI game object, or maybe we should do it like this: game object UI equals instantiate UI game object transform dot position and quaternion dot identity, since this is a UI element, and of course this needs to be as game object, and this needs to be capital. So this UI dot transform dot parent should be under our canvas. So I'm going to find game object with tag, and that tag will be weapon attachment tag. Let's make it like this, so that we have our UI, and the instantiate UI should be true, and better yet, let's make this a class variable. So yes, the transform. So now if we don't have an owner, if we have an owner, if we don't have an owner, if this weapon is not anymore attached, then if we have instantiate the UI, we simply want to destroy the UI and instantiate UI equals false. Now let's go back to Unity and weapon canvas. Let's add a new tag. Let's call this weapon attachments. Let's add it, weapon attachments, and I hope, yeah, let's make sure it's exactly the same as the one in our script. And now weapon attachment. Now we have our UI over here. Let's set it up. For a rifle we want, now I think this might give us some error, so let's try it. So now, since only our player can change this, let's just not instantiate a new UI, since our player probably knows what weapon we'll have. So let me quickly delete those. Yes, instantiate UI. Yeah. So let me delete and this stuff. And this no longer needed. So this is the site script. On our button, on click, I'm going to add a new, I'm going to drop my weapon, and I'm going to change on the weapon control. I want to change this is the site, and I want to change the site to call the function site attachments. And for the foregrip, I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to add weapon control, and I'm going to change the foregrip attachment. Okay, now we want this to open and close when we have a weapon that can change that. So let's go into our user input. Let's go to update now, or maybe yet let's create a new function just so that we don't clutter up everything. Let's go back to the ground and we'll say void attachments, and what we will do, if weapon manager dot active weapon that has attachments, if input dot get key code dot, I'm going to add the tab, and I'm going to add a new bool. So weapon UI, and I'm going to add a public game object, and I'm going to say weapon public game object, and I'm going to say weapon UI. Now of course, if you have a lot more, since we have a lot more, but I'm not going to show you for every weapon, you can add this an array, and for each type of weapon we have, you can also add an integer over here with an index, and every new weapon we have will change this index. So when we hit tab, it will activate the correct weapon UI for every weapon. I'm not going to show that over here. We have done something similar in the past, and I want the show weapon UI to be the opposite of the show weapon UI, and still on my attachments, if show weapon UI, then weapon UI dot not so weapon UI dot set active to be true, else weapon UI set active to be false. And once again, and let's just add another cool thing. Let's say camera.main.get component. Let's say blur dot, I think it's enable, or was it set active? No, which one was it? If I go to my main camera, I have the blur script. Maybe they have it on a different namespace, and of course they have the Unity sample assets image effects namespace. So over here should be image effects dot blur dot enabled equals true, and over here if the blur is enabled, we can say simply disabled. And let's add also this inside this so that it doesn't happen every frame. And let's drop inside our update where was it? Where is the update? Here is our update. And now of course we need to add, now the fast way, we don't want our player to be able to move, so the fast way to do that will be, let's just say if show weapon UI, if not show weapon UI, do not pass any values, do not take any axis from the horizontal or vertical. And just to be safe and sure, we can manipulate this so that we know they have 0 value. And for our aim we also need to change this. So we add, if we're not debugging the aim, or not show weapon UI, take the input get mouse button. So now let's see if we have if we forgot something to assign. Weapon UI, dropping it over here, and if I hit play, now of course we have it enabled from the start. And yes, I forgot, we need to also add the camera for our weapon UI. So let's make also this a public game object, and if so, set active to true and set active to false. Let's save this. Let's hit play, and of course we haven't added, and we have two audio listeners, so I'm going to remove this one, and on my third person character I'm going to drop the weapon camera, and now I'm going to disable this, hit play. I'm going to pick up my rifle. If I change to my rifle and if I hit tab, and now there are some problems, so let's do some fixes. So I'm going to say if get key up, show weapon UI, weapon camera set active to true, weapon camera set active to false. Let's go back now. Let's hit play. Now for some reason our UI doesn't open. And why is that? Maybe it's rendered above the other or not. Let's see. This is enabled. Where is this camera? Yes, it's in the correct position. This, yeah, I think because it's inside the layer. No. Oops. So this is enabled, but we don't see it. If I close the previous canvas, no. So the problems with it, with our weapon not showing, was the camera was too close to our weapon, so I pulled it back. Okay, and I also got rid of the second UI since we already have it. We already have one and we're not going to use the other one. And I took the rifle UI from the other canvas and drop it to the canvas we have a crosshair also. And now if I'm going to disable the rifle UI and disable the second camera, hit play. Let's maximize that. I'm going to pick up my rifle, and with the rifle we can see how we're aiming normally, and if I hit tab, I've opened up the weapon attachment script. Now of course we need to disable the crosshair, the other elements we have on the UI, but that's simply, I'm not going to mess with that. And we need to disable the input of the mouse, but that's also pretty simple. I'm not going to mess with it anymore, since that's probably, you know, if you're following along, you know how to do this stuff. And if I click side, I enable which attachment I want and which foregrip I want. Now the attachment of course is going to change some values on the it's going to change values on the weapon control floats, some values from the weapon control, like how the weapon is handling and stuff like that. And the foregrip, the only visual thing we can have to see that our scripts are working. As you see, with the foregrip enabled, he pushes, he moves his hand to the other position, and if I disable the foregrip, it moves it to the previous one. If I enable it, and if I disable it, of course, because the character is also moving, you will notice sometimes there's movement in for the weapon, but that's just because we haven't closed all the inputs from our character. And that was pretty much it for this video. This took a little longer than I expected. So anyway, this is an additional part. You don't have to follow it. If this is just for, you know, to showcase the flexibility of the way and the system we've set this thing all up. So next time we will work more on the advanced AI. So thanks for watching. Support us on Patreon if you can't. It helps us a lot. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with your friends, and join us on all the social media you can. So bye bye.